let's wrap it all together. What we have done, we basically gone into the strategic tool and KPIs, but at the same time, I took the opportunity in doing what we call a refreshment to the concept. We start with, the tools and strategic tool. Then we said, okay, we define the data flow diagrams and we spent a very good times. We use also the flip chart, and we said the data flow diagrams element and what they are meant. We also given an example of a data flow diagrams. We given an examples of a main process and how you can divide it into sub-processes. We also taken an example of university registration, UPR. UPR is my favorite. I like it. We spend time. In the UPR, we learned how to model data flow diagrams for an Uber system using a context diagram. Then we later gone into level 1 data diagram. We use also another system data flow diagram called context diagram. Then we went to the lower level of that. And then we went to your assignment and we solved your assignment, which is about banking loan. And we done level 1 and level 2. Then we start with the entity relationship. We've given a good coverage on the concept of entity relationship. It is, what is an entity relationship? We mentioned the element of entity relationship and attributes and what is a relationship. We learn about what is a primary key, okay, and how you basically an entity know that's a primary key by underline. And we basically talk about strong entity, and that means an entity can stand independent, okay, of the others. Example, supplier is an independent, strong entity, all right? And we talk about a weak entity, example, dependence. A child cannot exist without a parents. So a parent and a child. So we call that what we call a weak entity. We given an example of a weak entity, okay? Then we went to what is, again, strong entity examples, okay? Then we went into what's a weak, like dependent. We done what we call simple attribute entity, which is a single value. Example, your student ID. You have only one value for student ID. That's the reason it's called simple value. Gender, you have only one instant value for gender to store into that entity. Composite is basically an entity that can be broken down into multiple entities. Address, name. We discussed is example of composite. Address breaking down by your street, city, state, zip code, could be flat number. Single entity is example date of birth, gender, that's a single. Okay, multiple entity, the symbol is double, okay, circle, and it is mean an entity that has multiple value. Example, a student has, okay, let's say many skill. An employee has many skill. A customer has many addresses, more than one address. A student have more contacts, mobile. We have a mobile, phone, whatever, multiple. Qualifications. Derivative entity is an entity where you drive a value. Example, in our example, if I want to drive the cost of my order, we have here a good example, the example of what here. This is a good example of a derivative entity. I want to know the total cost. If you look at it, 2822. So total cost is 20. Okay, in this case, example, currency $20. In this case, the cost is a derivative, entity. If you want to know how many item this order has, is a 3, is a derivative. So in this case, let's say you have a drug or a milk, okay, and in this one you want to know the age of the drug. In this case, this is the manufacturing date of the drug, and this is the age. It's driven from that. If you have a soft drink and you want to know how old is that soft drink, so the date manufacturing and the dates current date. So student age, this is student entity, this is the date of birth, and here is the age. You have courses that the student take, and you want to calculate the GPA, that's the derivative. You have an employee, and the employee, okay, basically the employee is hire date, and this is how many years been in the company. Or you own a car and you want to know the age of a car, the car manufacturing, and basically the age of the car. I personally like this. I think this is putting it all together, because what you have the employee, and here is you have an entity employee. This is underlined is the attributes, primary key. This is a composite attributes, which is name, first name, middle name, last name, address, street, zip code, road. Skill is a multiple value attribute. Employee, hire date, and number of years is a derivative. So again, we discuss all of these. We discuss the relationship, cardinality. This is what we call it recursive, ordinary relation between its single, example, employee and a manager. An employee could be an employee, at the same time he could be a manager. Okay? And here is the binary, the relationship between two entities. We discussed the cardinality, one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. One-to-one, a person has one car. Many students belong to one major. Many students enroll in many courses. So in the many-to-many, we do what we call a bridging. We discussed the cardinality in the details, and we said what is cardinality. We discussed the honorary prerequisite, manager, employee, okay, and basically we also discuss all of these. Okay, we solve them. They are all in your assignment. We spend good time in saying the cardinality, one to many and maximum, minimum. Okay, and we done that here in this example. We given a good example on a drug prescription, and we said how we can translate the drug prescription of a doctor's into as a requirement. Think of it, it's like the drug prescriptions a physician give you, how we convert that into an ER diagram, and how we do the cardinality. We done that, okay? We identify from here the entities, and then after that, we done the learn through our practical exercise what we call the cardinality for each one of them. Then after that, we went to the KPIs, which is the easiest part, and we basically identified this the solution for a KPI in your assignment. Okay, I hope it was an interesting, interesting session for you. And we closed it up with unnormalized. We learned how to do unnormalized. And we identify in the unnormalized the tables, okay, from from the unnormalized, this is unnormalized. We give an example like in Excel. Okay, you have a lot. The weakness is basically redundancy. Weakness is no relationship, search, and all of that. And we showed you how you do what we call the normalization. In this case, if you remember, we discussed the normalization. In this case is very simple. This is 1 table, entity 2. This is a 3, and this is a 4. Prior to that, we have gone through an example of relevant to that, which is a customer place an order for many items, which is this one, and the only thing is that customer entity is not there. We went into that. We done the ER model for customer. A customer has a nationality. Customer place an order for item, part, and supplier. I hope it was an interesting session for you. I always say, always will be good that you, before you do your exercise, you go through the literatures and the material and also the reading material sent to you. And there is really a great gain into that. Thank you. Hope you enjoy this session.